Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Weekly Brief. I am Robbie Feinberg. I'm Director of Communications and Government Relations for the Maine School Management Association. Today, I am coming to you. The date is March 10th, 2026. We are supposedly about a month off from the end of the legislative session, and we have a whole lot to catch you up on. It has been a very, very busy few weeks in the legislature and at the state house. Several long nights on a lot of different bills. So we have a whole lot to catch you up on. So I will share my screen and get right into it now. So, the very first thing that we did want to share with you was today, March 10th. This is just a day after there was a major public hearing in the Education Committee. This was the bill LD 2226. And this was a bill that is really the culmination of years of work within the Education Committee, specifically around the EPS school funding formula. And we really appreciated the real debate and discussion that did take place on Monday regarding this bill. There were really school officials from across the state who were able to share their perspectives on this. And really, what we heard a lot of school officials saying that the funding formula really does need updating. We heard from some who had concerns because of the way that it would affect their particular districts, but still stressed the need for equity. And it really set up well. The amount of feedback and perspectives that were heard at the legislature should hopefully set up the education committee well as they do move forward with this and really work this bill over the next few weeks. In terms of what the timeline of this bill looks like, we're expecting probably to see some sort of work session on this within the next week or so. The legislature and the education committee, they are up against some tight deadlines right now. There is sort of this deadline that has been talked about actually for this Friday, where each committee is supposed to have reported out all of their bills. So we are at this kind of key point right now. However, there are always exceptions that can be made, and we do know that the DOE and MEPRI are working on more simulations, things like that, to get information to them. So we likely will see this bill continuing to kind of get worked throughout the rest of the session, and we will of course share more information with you all. We just wanted to share kind of what our key messages as our organizations, MSSA and MSBA, kind of what we are sharing about this. So first of all, we do believe that 2226 provides some real needed changes to the school funding formula. This is a formula that is really outdated at this point, and specific parts of it are. We've heard this from MEPRI over the past year or so, particularly the piece that I'm thinking about is the regional adjustment. And this has been talked about how this really has gotten out of whack because of the way that we work as a state now, in terms of the fact that we have minimum teacher salaries. And that just doesn't really work with the way that the regional adjustment works in terms of how it determines the salaries to increase or what those look like kind of across from region to region. So really there are just changes that need to be made, and really because of this outdated manner, there are parts of the formula that schools are losing out on a significant amount of money because of these outdated parts of the formula. So we really are pushing and saying we need to at least make some of these changes to ensure that schools get the funding that they should have been receiving for years. That is kind of that part of that 55% we know should have been receiving for years. So we really do want to see these changes move forward. This has been a really impressive, comprehensive review. At the same time, we are urging some caution around some of the parts of the bill around special education. There are real questions about the full impact of some of these different parts related to special education, just how much this would affect special education services and potentially resources in the state, and particularly what it would mean for individual districts, where the last thing we want to do is actually harm certain districts because of this, in particular make it actually more difficult for them to provide special ed. So we're really hoping that that they kind of take the suggestion of MEPRI and really wait until we have that full picture before moving forward with any of those pieces. And then the other piece is we are asking for a hold harmless provision. We do know that there are most districts would see an increase through this, but there are a few that would be affected and would see reductions in funds. And we're asking, as this transition move forward, we would like to really avoid drastic funding swings as this new formula is implemented. So that is really our message going forward. And again, we will keep you in touch about particular work sessions and what things look like moving forward. Also, if this bill, does get out of the committee, which I think we're hoping that it will, and get to the House and Senate, that is where we will really need you all to talk to your legislators. And so we will be in touch on what that will look like in the weeks ahead. In addition, wanted to just give you a quick update on where things actually stand with the supplemental budget process and kind of how things work for education. So there's actually been a lot of talks around this over the past few weeks, and want to just give you a big kind of sense of how this works. So the governor has already released her supplemental budget proposal. We've shared that with you all. It had definitely certain initiatives that did have big effects on education. And so what has happened over the past few weeks is that there was actually a big public hearing on the public education parts of the supplemental budget proposal. And we certainly testified on that in front of both the Education Committee as well as the Appropriations Committee. And then what happens from there is that the Education Committee then took everything that they heard, and that they then held multiple work sessions on this about a week and a half ago on these particular initiatives. And what they do is basically they look at all of these different initiatives in the supplemental budget, and they vote on each one about whether they say that these are good changes, they oppose them, they want them removed. And then they also actually say if there are particular things that weren't in the governor's proposal that the committee does feel strongly should be in any supplemental budget, deal that ultimately does come out of the legislature. So that is what happened over the course of a week. Was the Education Committee met, discussed all of those different pieces, and brought those recommendations in the form of what's called a report back to the Appropriations Committee. Now, once those report backs, those every single committee kind of does one of those report backs. And then it goes to the Appropriations Committee. Appropriations Committee takes everything that they see and then really consider these and decide what they want to include in a final budget deal. Before that is then ultimately sent to the House and the Senate. So where we are right now is that the Education Committee has sent its recommendations to Appropriations. We are still in the middle of that process right now, but things can change. And in terms of what actually ended up in here, we wanted to just share a few different pieces that we're encouraged about. So first, there were two items from the supplemental budget proposal that did receive unanimous support. So one is the state's commitment to paying 55% of education costs. This was unanimously supported by both the Education Committee, and the Appropriations Committee has also already unanimously agreed to include the funding to do this work as well in the supplemental budget proposal. We're really encouraged about this. This really shows that the legislature continues to understand this important commitment that the state has made and continues to ensure that 55%. And you will need to just continue to do the work kind of locally to show why this is so important, both for kind of local fiscal responsibility and what this does mean for education, and how this does help to ensure you can have a really good education for your kids. The other item that did receive unanimous support from the Education Committee was about $6 million for school bus safety measures. So what this money would do, as proposed by the governor, is that it would retrofit all Maine school buses to ensure that they are all equipped with both those school bus crossing arms as well as anti-pinch door sensors. We were really pleased to see this. Our committees are fully in support of obviously protecting our children as soon as they get on the bus in the morning, from when they get off the bus in the evening, in the afternoon. And so we were really pleased to see that the Education Committee agrees with that real priority, and does support that $6 million. So we will see what happens from there as well. And then there are a few other items that also got support of the majority of the Education Committee, but did not get a full support, unanimous support. So there are a few others that we just wanted to highlight. One is the free community college program that did receive support from the Democrats on the committee, as well as increasing the minimum teacher salary over 3 years, ultimately up to $50,000 by the 2029-2030 school year. And then also requiring a bell-to-bell cell phone ban by August 1st of this year in schools. And so these all could change. These are just recommendations from the Education Committee right now. It's important to note none of these are included in any final budget deal at this point. But we did just want to say, kind of how the Education Committee is feeling about each of these different pieces. So again, lots of moving parts. We'll keep you informed throughout the rest of the supplemental budget process. And then just a little bit about what we are watching over the course of the next week. So one is today, March 10th, the Governor's Commission on School Construction. That's presenting its final report to the Education Committee. It includes lots of recommendations, things around modernizing the construction process, maximizing resources, increasing funding. So that will all be heard as well. And you can find a link to that on the legislature's website. If you go to the link for the Education Committee, you can watch that presentation. So that's what's going on this afternoon. And then tomorrow, Wednesday afternoon, there are also going to be bills on a lot of different issues. So LD 1892, this is a bill on school construction that the committee has been talking about, as well as several others, as well as one on teacher certification, LD 2175. This is an important bill. This is one that we've been pushing closely. It would make basically finalize some state board rules around teacher certification that we believe and really every other group representing educators in Maine has come out in support of these new rules, saying that they would really make a difference in terms of strengthening our education workforce, getting the best people into these positions. So we are really encouraged about that. So again, that's what's coming up this week. I'm sure we'll have a whole lot more to share with you about what's next week, but a busy week is ahead. And again, if you have any other questions about bills, any other questions about legislation, feel free to reach out to me. You've got my email right there. You've got my cell phone number right there. Feel free to text, call, email, anything. We are welcome to that. Then also, if you got a link to our legislative advocacy dashboard, which we regularly update as well, you can find a link to that right there with more information about bills, links to kind of legislative calendars, different tools for actually finding your legislators, a whole lot to check out there. And then also, obviously, these are posted on YouTube, these video updates, and there's a link to MSMA's YouTube as well right there at Maine Schools. So thank you so much, as always, for your work for Maine Schools. And we look forward to talking with you probably very soon because so much is changing. So we'll probably talk with you within the next few days. All right. Thanks so much.